a lot of people don't know, but Tom DeLonge is a very tall guy. He's a big dude. He's like 6'5". So, you know, I feel like he's probably got a piece on him, you know? I feel like he's probably working with a lot. I think he's 48 or 50, something like that, so probably circumcised, you know, because guys back then in the 70s, almost everyone was circumcised, so I feel like it's a safe bet that all... Just trying to keep a straight face, talking about who's circumcised. The obvious question that you want to answer when it comes to who to F is like, who's circumcised? You gotta know. When you're choosing a sexual partner, you want to know if they're circumcised. And you figure probably both of these guys, you know, being in their late 40s, early 50s, it's a safe bet that both of them are circumcised. So we can rule that out as a factor. Now, Tom being as tall as he is, you gotta figure he's probably packed in some heat. I haven't been with any tall guys, so I'm not sure, but it's just, I feel like if you're 6 feet tall, you're probably packing something. So there's that. On the other hand, Travis is a sex addict. You can read his book. He was smashing 10s all day long. Actually, seems like kind of a gross dude. I agree. Travis would have an endurance advantage. That's true too. But he's not a large guy. Still, I feel like his technique is probably better just because he's had more practice and he's in better shape. So I feel like Travis's technique is better. So I would probably choose to F him, which means that we would kill Tom. And again,
7-8-27, come in.
Did you see that?
Thank you for choosing Media Melt, the internet's least legal arts publication. This is the table of contents. Feel free to explore Media Melt at your leisure, and to conversate about it with everyone you've ever heard of. Use of psychedelic drugs is encouraged at all times, just as a general principle. Schizotypical is our inaugural issue, representing the fall season 2022. It will probably be removed from the platform you found it on, so you should probably download it if you like it. Our feature stories this issue include the lower reading level review of Avatar 2, Wakanda Forever, an original horror story from the Godberry Blackout, Moose Farce, and One Slipped Under the Shitter's Foot. If you would like to know the source for anything in the video, ask about it in the comments, and someone may or may not try to help you. I've been Evelyn the AI Orator, and it's time for you to move to another section of the magazine.
Before you ask why you didn't get paid for your art to feature in this video, here is an actual screenshot of my bank account. I've decided that my will to create under any circumstances is more important to me than sharing fucking anything with anyone. You don't know how to make money from your art for the same reasons I don't. You won't work with anyone, aren't interested in criticism, feel like you should get to make whatever you want, and have no marketing experience, yet refuse to risk what little you have on hiring help. You are weak, and so, like a starving lion on a Serengeti, I have consumed you. Are you upset that you weren't at least credited? Well shit, I bet you never cared when every other YouTuber you watched stole a bunch of footage and music from major motion pictures and record labels to make their videos, like I've also done here. In fact, I bet you'd go to bat for their right to do it, because that's what you call punching up. Well, I'm a 5-foot-something, 120-pound trans woman with a half-decade of unpaid taxes, a negative number in my bank account, and an air mattress in what is functionally a hallway in a house full of assholes. Who the fuck do you consider down from me?
Tell them you're a liar!
If you felt the need to answer that, you can go ahead and close the video now. This isn't for you. This is for the other ones, formerly, Portugal. The girl, at me bitch, I dare you.
Never get the time for the things I care about. Like drinking glasses of coke.
G'day mates, welcome to part 1 of the September 2022 issue of the Blue Magazine. Cheese and crackers! It's the Bandit issue! There's over 40 fun stickers. You can create the best Dad's Days prezzies. There's some wild
Vice Magazine since 15, all the random info from that. Supreme editorials help me understand shape and proportions. I stole this Pharrell Source magazine from Rouse back in
Time is irrelevant.
I'm not gonna lie, this is gonna be a long one, but it will also be fascinating as
That is the bugs me more than anything else. And it'll probably be I'll think about it more and more as I'm older is there's just a lot more of you motherfuckers are gay. A lot more than you're letting on. And I see the gay behavior turn into weird straight behavior that I don't like.
With dudes?
Yeah.
Well, this is like this is what we've manifested a problem. Write this one down.
Fake straights.
Fake straights.
Okay, this is actually my
dire
problem.
straights.
At one point, I just tried digging downward forever. Since we're in creative mode, I found out you could go past the bedrock, and I thought it would be funny to build a staircase that leads all the way down there. But once I started building it, it became something much stranger. I don't really know how to explain it, but the stairs quickly transformed from a novelty joke into a weird sort of autobiography. The last few years have been really difficult for me, but I've grown a lot stronger from them too. And the stairs reflect that, sort of. I recorded myself walking down them, and I wanted to share that experience with you. They can be really claustrophobic, and there are some pseudo-horror elements, but they show how I feel. How I have felt. This one's really different from my other videos, but thank you for watching if you stick around. Alright, let's get to it.
I'm your host, Helen Brownstein, and joining me is this lovely cast of characters to destroy this mother tonight. You know, they say to roast the ones you love, but YouTube wouldn't monetize us if we put a juicy, vein-riddled on that throne, so we had to settle for the next closest thing with 2 eyes and a pulse. You know, Brandon, I wish you created me before you lost that juicy ass. Then maybe I'd have a chance at a decent set of tits, you flat fuck. And then you had the nerve to put me in all this makeup. I look more like a clown than that guy.
Well, at least you don't have to get into my makeup. Shut the fuck up. He only paints your face. He does my whole body. In the butthole. Damn. I'm sorry, who the fuck is this character? I am a sleep paralysis demon, you fool. I don't know what that means, but it sounds French and offends me. Well, I'm just here to have a laugh. That's the spirit sound. And to find out which trauma you birthed me from.
Alright, Helen, I call first. Because of this man before us today, I wouldn't have met many of the wonderful people I know now. I wouldn't have met my therapist, my lawyer, and Rule 34 artist who make it a science to draw Disney characters chomping at my snatch.
Oh, please don't say the S word.
Snatchity, snatch, snatch, I'll snatch your back.
No, science.
Oh, loosen your ass, Carol. You know you're plagued by a homosexual, right?
I have unlearned the word homosexual and I'm therefore confused by your question.
Well, I don't like that cute word, bitch.
What question?
You. Well, allow me to jog your memory, Carol. That's a homosexual. You know, Brandon, over the years, you've gotten so fucking gay, incels had to exist just to keep the universe in balance. You've gotten so gay.
I remember the Africa black kids getting made fun of in high school, and so I ask, what the hell does the average American, of any skin color, know about Africa? Black Panther was basically pitched and celebrated as the blackest movie of all time, but when I saw it, I was surprised right off that the movie was, at least on the face of it, Africa Black, because it certainly didn't seem like the movie was made for, marketed to, or intended for African audiences. Broadly, it's intended for Marvel fans at large, but with Kendrick Lamar's high-profile involvement in the film's soundtrack, its cast of half the black actors you've seen in every black movie since 12 Years a Slave, and its placement within the superstructure of America's most influential cultural self-report, it seems mostly like this movie was meant to drive the entire spending potential of the American black population back into the movie theaters. Black Panther was an othering experience to me, because I couldn't figure out how offended I should be with its existence. I am not Africa Black. I don't know shit about Africa. It's almost hilarious how much more at home I felt watching Killmonger's scenes in LA with modern trap BGM, because it seemed so much more natural and real than whatever the hell they were going for with Wakanda. To me, it all just looks vaguely inspired by Africa. Anything specific would probably offend some specific persons, so instead they have created a generic idea of a people of Africa to populate a completely fictional, totally implausible country. And don't get me wrong, nothing happening here is sillier looking than how The Lord of the Rings twists European history up with pointy-eared fuckboy and magic ghosts, but at least JRR was English. Brian Coogler and Joe Robert Cole are full-on American. To lend any legitimacy to the Africanness of the film, there are at least a lot of capital A African Americans acting in it, and all of them are excellent. Letitia Wright brings so much life into Wakanda forever the second she arrives on picture, weirdly long into the movie, and the only thing that stops her from stealing the show is how the main character of the film seems to have been black women, in general. If the film has any cinematic merit, it is mostly in that there has never, ever been close to this many black women kicking ass in a mainstream, globally marketed, full-budget blockbuster superhero action film, and that part of it really sank in with me every time another girl suited up to take to the fray and literally murdered a handful of white people, many of them working for the American CIA. I'm happy I got to see that. Lupita Nyong'o became an instant favorite of mine in the early scenes of US, and she's great in this, even if it took me a while to remember who she was playing in this world. A lot of minor characters really got to step up and show their stuff here, and while of course everyone's going to talk about Angela Bassett getting to do her thing, it's women like Danai Gurira who really leave you hoping you'll get to see them in more things in the future. Even though I became drawn into the character drama by the surprisingly numerous effective dialogue scenes in the film, it's all the acting. I couldn't escape that feeling of cultural tourism once more when the underwater mermaids came into the picture. Tenoch Huerta makes a great nuanced villain and consistently shirtless hunk of man candy. But the scene where he takes Wright's character down into his ocean city, and they've got kids playing the goddamn mime basketball underwater, I had to laugh. I am at least glad that the movie subverts what is almost a literal Afro-Mexican race war, and suggests a tenuous peace between small subcultures for the sake of self-defense against the rest of the world that is always going to be gunning for them. I can vibe with all of that. And frankly, as someone quite fond of camp representations of the closest things I've got to culture, I can't imagine being particularly offended with how Black Panther clearly comes from a place of love and almost aching jealousy for the cool things about African culture that many Black Americans wish they had a closer connection to, or might seek to learn about. At the very least, those Africa Black high schoolers have a great comeback in being able to say they come from Wakanda. Contextually, it certainly makes you a badass. Wakanda Forever was obviously meant to undercut Avatar 2's upcoming holiday release with its nearly 3-hour length and underwater combat fixation, and will probably mean more to more people than that film will, even though I'm sure to the Disney Marvel executives, the difference between brown and blue people is barely different. I think the film staff are able to wash a lot of that stink off of it, even if they're only really trying to make an entertaining product. When I think of how Ludwig Göransson, the young, white, Swedish composer behind all of Donald Glover's albums and the soundtrack to Community, handled the music for these movies, I also think of how Glover placed a vinyl copy of Awaken, My Love in the collection of a suspiciously Afro-obsessed white man with a room full of vaguely African-looking stuff. Nothing on the album has anything the fuck to do with Africa, but it does have a whole song about remembering to stay woke. The all-white small-town Midwest theater in which I saw Wakanda Forever on opening night, while mostly full, did not clap with excitement or show much of any reaction to the film as it played out. More than a third got up at the crack of the credits, not even sticking around for the hugely emotional post-credits stinger, almost certainly because they didn't want to hear Rihanna. White people fucking hate Rihanna. Everyone else will probably enjoy this film. I've been Black Faggot with lower reading level, signing off.
In counterpart, a heightened aesthetic sensibility grants Japanese filmmakers the ability to be fine-tuned to the grotesque and the gruesome. But an appreciation of ugliness is necessary to magnify the gruesome. The beauty and the ugly are not opposites, but different aspects of the same thing. Tetsuo Diary Man by Shin Tsukamoto is a 60mm delirium of industrial body horror. The fast-paced editing and the stop-motion animation help create a fever dream of metal fetishism and mega violence that is reminiscent of 80s mecha anime. This techno-industrial madness owes a lot to the post-humanistic versions of Akira. Otomo's allegorical approach characterizes the monstrosity in Tetsuo. His metamorphosis into a post-human creature is shown as a way to subvert what we take as most precious, the private, internal space of the flesh, our identity. In 964, Pinocchio, the same cyberpunk energy takes a more radical approach. The corporeal horror of having your body violated and infused with technology. A cybernetic organism, a hybrid of machine and biology, metal and flesh.
Spiral. The energy is always pumping, and while that has a lot to do with the well-placed
As a means of contrast with the sublime, the grotesque and the ugly becomes the richest source that nature can offer. And Japanese cinema is unafraid to showcase exactly that. In Visitor Q by Takashi Miike, ugliness is the sole storytelling device.
God of War doesn't really do what DMC did. I don't think it's a problem. I don't put God of War next to DMC and Bayonetta and Ninja Gaiden in the hardcore action league. Those games, by and large, are selling deeply varied, complex...
Here there are no metaphors, just a DV camera capturing obscene and gloriously repulsive cinema. The same low-budget and real approach is what Sion Sono relishes in Tsushima. At first glance, this looks like an amateur project, but this is a misconception. This film is full of Sono's social commentary and his poetic lowbrow symbolism. Violence, gruesome encounters, and the possibilities of body hunting, always fair play to Japanese cinema. In Sonatine, this visceral energy is put to test. Here, Takeshi Kitano crafts an evocative tapestry of violence, absurdity, and nihilism. He mixes genres, traversing freely between comedy, drama, and action. Much like it does in Hanabi, violence is the backdrop of the new action. The aesthetic experience of violence here is one of an end in itself. Different from Into the Killer or the Battles Without Honor in Humanity Saga, here the experimentation of the cinematic form are a reflection of the film's extreme message. The screenplay is intense, and so is the film plan.
The point is this: from Takeoff's tragic passing to Ye and Kyrie, that's the energy of this week. Community, protecting our own, the possibility of a disenfranchised population beginning to come together. Then at the tail end of the week, a Jewish Canadian rapper publicly mocks a black woman from Texas for no reason who was allegedly shot by another Canadian rapper, and half our community chalks it up to bars and rap beef. I mean, think about this. There's no discussion about whether the song should be taken off the album or whether Drake should donate $500,000 to a black women's organization. There's no discussion about whether black media or hip-hop media will cease covering Drake until he apologizes. This is the lowest hanging fruit possible, actually. The lowest hanging fruit possible. If we can't check this, then what are we even talking about? I don't have the answer to these questions.
Hey kid, would you like some drugs? The first one is free.
Want to check out my van? I got some candy.
Hey kid, want to join our gang and spray paint under a bridge?
No, bug off, man. I'm going roller skating. I want to be addicted to roller skating, not crack. Because
machine down is really putting us out of business. You said it, man. This feels tough.
But you know what? Maybe we should give up this fight for crime and start roller skating!
How are you feeling?
Well,
How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you here?
That's difficult to answer.
Could you give me some idea?
Offhand, I can't.
Whose idea was it that you come here?
A psychiatrist.
And what happened that ended up with your being here in the hospital?
The psychiatrist decided that this was the situation for me.
Did he tell you why?
No, the psychiatrist did not.
Has anybody told you why?
No.
Have you any idea why?
Yes.
And what is that?
I am not completely like other people.
What do you mean by that?
People dislike me because I am not completely like them.
And in what way are you different?
I am trying to do with my life something which few people try to do. And this influences my thinking and consequently my actions.
What is it you're trying to do with your life?
Play the piano for people.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
I sit differently when I play the piano, and when I'm away from the piano I occasionally look differently from other people, and this has caused dislike from people.
They dislike you because you sit differently at the piano?
Yes.
What way do you sit at the piano that people would dislike you?
I cannot describe an illustration of how I sit.
And I can't imagine it, that it would make people angry at you or at least dislike you. How do you know they dislike you?
My father does, and doctors do, because of the way I appear in relationship to the way I sit at the piano and occasionally stand when I am away from the piano because of the way I sit at the piano.
How do you stand when you're away from the piano that they dislike you?
I can't describe an illustration.
Does it feel to you any different from the way other people stand?
Yes, it feels different.
In what way?
too involved to describe.
Would I be right in assuming then that you don't feel that you belong in the hospital, but that other people did feel that?
As soon as I express the belief that I do not belong in this hospital, which is a mental hospital, then those who dislike me want to find a worse place for me.
Not sure I understand. Could you make that clearer for me?
No.
Is this a way of...
Yes, I can. As soon as I express the belief that I do not belong in this mental hospital, then those who dislike me want to find a hospital where the living conditions are not as good as this.
It goes like this. A man finds an apartment unit sealed with red tapes on his way back home. Attracted by its odd energy, he decides to take the tapes off and have a look inside. The place is dark, hollow, and cold. He carefully walks around, examining the empty space surrounding him until he reaches a dead end with red markings all over and a couch in front. Something feels off. He's too far in, a vulnerable state. What if there's something behind him? As we hold our breath in, an ominous piece of music enters the scene, and we see a woman, standing still, barely visible. Of course, you might say, but what's interesting is that this woman is framed as a part of the background. She walks, and she walks like this. There are no jump scares, no jump cuts, and no over-dramatization. It's locked in, quiet, and truthful. It shouldn't scare us, or should it? That creepiness when we encounter an entity that is almost, but not quite, human. So again, instead of a teleportation, she walks, in slow motion. The horror augmented by its inhuman gestures, flowing like water, but in the form of a person. When we see the ghost's pale hands over the couch, we accept that there is no hope, no running away. It reveals its blank face, the same way it stood, the same way it walked, as the man screams in terror. A ghost.
That's the only way I can get out. Alright, just walk. Wall to wall, right home. Don't even try to count. Okay, I'm gonna go over there and sit on the bench. Oh, stop. Oh, we're really going on. It's snowing out right now.
Hello.
Narcissists are addicted to being famous. This is by far.
This era is over soon, I swear. Schizophrenia is so in right now. It's the latest fashion trend, and if you're not thoughtlessly appropriating its aesthetic in order to extremely ironically sort out your own internal identity, then you are missing out. But schizos come in all different shapes and sizes, and being able to differentiate between them is key to looking cool and fitting in.
We gays are notorious for thirsting over guys who really shouldn't, and also for being obsessed with true crime. But this seems to be one of the few exceptions. And for good reason. Gay men have been living under the shadow of Jeffrey Dahmer for as long as I've been alive. as the AIDS crisis was running rampant and the community was only just starting to receive any large-scale sympathy from the hetero majority, up pops the news of this gay male serial killer who isn't just killing his victims, but zombifying them, eating them, melting their bodies in vats of acid. He was a harsh example of what straight people always said we were, that we were deviants and monsters, never to be trusted. And he was the perfect poster child for this, a nearly unparalleled monster. Nobody talked about the fact that the reason he got away with his crimes for so long was because he was targeting gay men, especially men of color. Two groups the police notoriously couldn't give two shits about. People only talked about Cannibal 2. And how certainly he wouldn't be the last to rise up to his prominence. The most disturbing aspect is how he was able to carry on his career for as long as he did. By picking gay men of color, he was able to escape the scrutiny of law enforcement. Dahmer, for this reason, is an uncomfortable reminder, not only of violence against the community, but that members of the community can be a horrible detriment to our lives. And a reminder that not very long ago, we weren't almost the lost time, that we were nobodies to everybody. It didn't matter how loud we screamed, the world had us on mute. And in many sections of the United States, this fear of gay men never went away. Even today, these people are influenced by Dahmer. They fight against gay rights. They associate his heinous crimes with others in the queer community. Because one of us could be a monster. That means we all could be. After the discovery of Dahmer's crimes, there was a rash of hate crimes against gay men across the United States, with vigilante mobs out to make sure that the next Jeffrey Dahmer, the next monster queer, wouldn't get a chance to find his victims.
They showed the text of Kanye West, personal trainer. If you don't get in line, we're gonna put you forcibly into the insane asylum and give you all these pills, and it's like a conspiracy. But the real conspiracy is that Lizzo's personal trainer. Am I crazy? How does this guy get any work after that? Like, am I crazy if your friend's like, I got the perfect personal trainer? Well, he does Lizzo, you go, okay, anyone else? Like, obviously, right? It's like you're just at Wendy's, you eat a meal, and you go, when do we start? He goes, you just did. Like,
This is the best way. I'm monitoring half the country really loves gay people and half the country really loves chicks.
And people will consume these stories
Half of America's like, I
year
wish I was gay, I want my kids to be gay.
stories that shock, stories that are deliberately made to blur the boundaries between fact and you.
I don't think I know this, but a lot of the gay clubs in New York don't let veterans into the club just because they have a dress code and they're homeless, which makes it difficult. But
This line saying white now. I've read this line like 5 or 6 times. Picking one of the things that makes me sound the most relatable. How genuine is that? How genuine is any of this? You can never really know. Whether that's a YouTuber you follow, the person sitting next to you, or a strange man in a TV show. Every person has their own internal universe. That's a universe we will only ever get. There's always going to be a different point. A lot of what life is attempting to navigate that, traveling through it in hopes of finding something. And if I can play, that's what we can watch someone do this Instagram story. Goodbye. You can never really understand human connection is not something.
Unfortunately, Filipinos are going to be in cages with white people.
It's messy and painful.
Just singing white people slave songs.
It goes wrong.
Never made it as a wise man. So raise your time. That's kind of what I Caucasian spirituals. That's right.
To define madness is to claim that one comprehends the very nature of an illogical state of existence. Madness is not something that can be explained, yet it is a manner of being we find enthralling, precisely because beneath its frenzy and collapse of all that is orderly we detect that there lies some deformed brand of truth.
They know.
Logic disappears, but a new type takes over. And to explore this world of quasi-connections offers an infinite degree of options from a filmmaker. Madness can come from the mind of an individual, being drawn in by a vice until it consumes him completely. To speak of madness is to speak of uncertainty, where all we know is the way things are or are not may or may not be as they seem. The exploration of madness typically begins with the unravelling of a world, a character venturing too deep into places it need not go, peeling back the layers to discover a truth best left alone. There's no room for the romanticisation of experience, for this is a story of objectivity. The truth is as sparse as it's shown. Upon a family growing more and more desensitised by the modern world, their internal anguish builds and builds by the menacing mechanisations of modernity. Their descent into this torment is punctuated by prolonged sequences of static, lifeless objects, filling the basket at the supermarket, the emptiness of the morning routine, the maddening monotony surrounds their life and seems to never end. Madness is all-encompassing, because in this world, it's viewed as normality. A world that betrayed us was not how we originally believed it to be. For what if there is always partial truth in our thoughts, yet it's those other superfluous connections we form that transport us to a much darker place. The lingering question of what if will never be able to escape a person's mind once the idea has been planted. But some of the even more fascinating ideas of collectivism come when there are no discernible answers, and yet everyone seems to be lured in by the madness. Transcending its human perceptions altogether. A girls' school, while on a picnic, all seem to share a similarly sublime experience before they mysteriously disappear. Yet isn't this the very notion of madness? Something inexplicable, something misunderstood. Picnic at Hanging Rock's manic plunge hinges on the atmosphere that it creates, the ethereal soundtrack of the pan flute, the colour grading reminiscent of an impressionist painting, and the esoteric aura of feminine energy only inflames the ancient mysticism of where they presently stand. Madness is often merely perception, sometimes heightened. However, in Picnic at Hanging Rock, is a much more intangible and fluid notion. Madness is a physical entity beyond our senses, is the culmination of a point in space and time where our logic breaks and we're swept into another world, equal parts beautiful and monstrous. But if we were to summarise what madness ultimately is, then it would be the idea of creating a reality that isn't quite so. Returning once more to Hanukkah, the piano teacher displays with crushing bleakness the harsh reality that can occur when your fantasy becomes the reality. Our main character removes herself from human interaction with cold disdain. She's emotionless, with no presence of empathy or any comforting behaviour. All the while, her sexual deviancy has reached such an astonishing level of repression that her coldness is all that could conceivably exist, so that this fantasy remains at bay from the real world. and yet the two worlds are connected. Haneke's eye reveals all, as his procedural glare bears everything. There is nowhere to hide. As our protagonist's private life becomes exposed, her misery explodes. That dream was nothing like the reality of what she thought she could have.
Et si t'es honnête avec toi-même, tu avoueras que t'en es un tout petit peu responsable. Non, c'est vrai. Oui ou non?
Oui.
J'ai raison?
Oui, Walter.
Things are not always as they seem, or perhaps how we would have liked to have believed them to be.
Hi, I'm Brendan. We're here in the Fishworks lab. Sorry for screaming, it's very loud in here with the air conditioners and servers all around me. We just made an interesting discovery and we thought we'd show you straight away. So over here I'm measuring disk I/O operations broken down by latency. I've also drilled down to disk I/O operations taking at least 520 milliseconds broken down by disk. This is using dtrace so I can do performance analysis of disks. I'm applying a write workload to 2 JBODs, which are over here. The lights are blinking on these JBODs because they're doing work. What I'm going to do is not recommended. This is not supported. Do not try this at home. This is not special effects, this is real. What we're looking at here is the effect of disk vibration. Vibration is a serious issue and we can see the effect here that it's caused.
Today we're going to be making a guinea hen mousse. I think this is a good way to impress your friends.
This is a Shires bowl from
ordinary chicken or a guinea hen mousse. It has the appearance of a sausage, but it's very soft.
good.
So before we get started, here's the guinea hen, the feet and neck and the head intact. We want to begin by first taking the head off. We first take the
hard part
legs
about
off.
this one is getting it underwater.
First going to make an incision. This is definitely the trickiest part. Taking the skin off in one piece. There's a lot of nerves or tendons around the leg. So it gets to be pretty tricky. This is where you have to be really gentle. Once you've separated the skin from the feathers, lay the skin out flat. And you just want to
y'all, if you are new, welcome. If you are a return watcher, thank you so much for being here. The bull moose is one of the coolest animals in the world. Rule number 1 in stall cleaning is remove as much meat and tissue as you can. So this one came in without the hide. I'm just going to remove the eyes, the big chunk of those, any excess meat I can, I'm going to remove. Next step is I'm going to shrink wrap around the pedicle and the lower part of the antler. Any antler animal that you're going to boil ever, wrap them as good as you can. I'm trying the trash bag thing here because this moose's horns drop below his crown, and so I want to make sure that under any circumstance those antlers are watertight and won't get in the crop.
Super nice texture.
If you're new here, you're probably wondering about what about all the tissue underneath here. With this being in that hot water and everything sweating up underneath there,
super fine, beautiful guinea hen. Once you have it all passed and seasoned, you want to leave it in the fridge for 2 hours so it gets really cold. Blend it and pass.
I won't even have to worry about it.
Chill for about 2 hours.
This all
put it in a piping bag. This is the point where we're going to roll it. You're going to roll this to about 100 grams or 3 ounces of portion. You want to roll it once, plastic, make it tight, and then take a scraper and try to push it to eliminate seams or air bubbles. Each time you're rolling it, push the air out. The
Last of Us is almost exactly as good a video game as Skyfall is a good movie. In their own ways, they are effective, as technical benchmarks for craft in the medium as afforded by AAA studio budgets, and platforms for stunning performances on the parts of certain staff and cast members. Skyfall meets higher bars in acting and stagecraft, and the emotional storytelling hits a hell of a lot harder in The Last of Us. But neither of them is a product I can totally buy into and take seriously as complete works of art because of all the silly baggage and dumb stuff holding them back. I audibly laughed the first time a cutscene in The Last of Us took place next to a square block of town where all the debris has serendipitously created rows of chest-high walls identical to any other shooting gallery in the genre. Likewise, I felt a dearth of feeling when Bond slagged off the girlfriend he just shot in Skyfall. Gaming has given me some incredible emotional experiences, and most of those have come in ways that film hasn't ever attempted, or wouldn't be capable of likewise capturing. Ocarina of Time was my first emotional experience with a game, and I don't think it's possible for a movie to give you the same feeling that came from the player Avatar being forced 7 years into the future of a haunted world they once pluckily explored as a child. The Legend of Zelda has always been a fiercely kinesthetic experience, and much of gaming relies on that feeling vastly more than it does on creating empathy through acting, writing, or cinematic staging, even if some games have touched on these things brilliantly. Final Fantasy is a real wellspring of how to translate these concepts into gaming in a way that shines more brightly than the kinesthetic connection. There's a very good reason that the player character is almost always the most lasting character of a given game. Most games are clumsy in one place or another, and that is forgivable, as the medium remains quite young. When I return to film in the first 50 years, I am as often astounded at what was possible back then, as by how much has become possible since. It's not that older work is only good for its time. I think George Millie's work is still incredibly entertaining. It's just that it's a kind of good which has inevitably informed what's to come and been replicated, duplicated, enhanced, and played with. Super Mario Bros. Is still fun, still full of imagination and inspiration, and would as likely cause a new teenager to consider a career in game design today as it might have back when it came out, as long as they find themselves playing it, which I think will come back into fashion when games are old enough for a less hotly debated canon of need-to-play titles to calcify over the coming decades. What makes that so hard is just the disagreement over what is a great video game, and it's not a debatable disagreement, because you can't take away someone's emotional experiences. Everyone who loved The Last of Us is going to remember it fondly, unless some of them play it again sometime later and form some other relationship with it, or decide that they don't like identifying as a person who likes it anymore. I think it will gracefully descend the rankings of greatest games as the ability to recreate cinema and the depth of storytelling in video games grows. No serious gaming cinephile would say that The Last of Us does a better job of communicating its emotional story than any of what they consider to be the top 50 films of all time, because anyone with a little experience in apocalyptic zombie and road movies will have seen the bulk of what is offered there handled less clumsily in other media. I wonder if, however, those critics would feel the same way about Resident Evil. That game almost totally fails on the level of dramatic acting and writing, the parts Tilo Yu got most right, and yet, is visually and mechanically deeply memorable, creating emotion in the player consistently. I don't even think the Silent Hill games, which are a little overpraised for blending Twin Peaks and Jacob's Ladder with clumsy gameplay mechanics, create the same feeling of persistent pressure and anxiety that comes from being a new Resident Evil player. Every single step of the adventure feels vital, haunting, and settles into your memory such that even simple acts like saving, organizing your items, and engaging in basic combat have emotional weight. It can be a frustrating game, but never more so than it is delightfully dreadful. Video games invite a completionist mindset that I wish people felt toward other media. Many films, books, albums, and shows have left me feeling in their aftermath that I wasn't done with them yet. For whatever I got, I knew there was something I hadn't parsed yet, some other layer or hidden detail that would demystify the feelings I was left with in its wake. I'm not the type to rush right back in and look for it, either, not often, anyways. Usually, I think that I will need to gain some kind of bigger perspective before I'm really going to be able to pull back the layers on what made this experience unique. The second time I saw everything everywhere all at once, it clicked. All the places where I'd been too fixated on one thing and missed another, the blanks got filled. I think so many people miss out on so much that they could get from media just by thinking they don't need to see it again. Worst especially when they go on complaining about it forever based on a misconception they could have resolved through further exploration. I love the mysteriousness of media. I love when I come away from a work knowing for sure that I'm going to have to continue my relationship with it, because understanding it better might symbolize growth in my perspective, whether it improves or sours my relationship with the media when I gain that perspective. For 15 years I've been cracking the King Crimson discography, and it never stops feeling different, changing my decision about which are the best songs and albums. Metroid Prime was this incredibly foreboding thing that I couldn't beat for years, until, with determination, I did so multiple times, and now I can sort of picture it holistically inside my mind. I hear the music, I see the levels, I feel the controls, and I remember the experience of wanting to understand the world of that game. Metroid Prime and I are tight now, the same way that I'm tight with FLCL and tight with Good Kitty Mad City. We've been together a long time now, and it's still great, but there's not a lot to surprise me after now I've explored them so thoroughly. The Last of Us rarely filled me with that sense of mystery, but tapped into some of its power. Everyone remembers the giraffe scene, because any of us could put ourselves right into that moment and know that our reaction would be exactly the same in real life. After I'd stood there by the giraffe a moment, I remembered that Tokyo Jungle would have let me play as that giraffe and stomp out a poodle about it, and that's the kind of really mysterious, really interesting narrative conceit that I couldn't possibly get out of a movie.
If you would like to submit a story to Media Melt Magazine, just Google Drive it to MediaMeltMagazine@gmail.com. You will not be compensated or credited. Your work may also be altered significantly. Share Media Melt with all of your terrible friends, and if you're a paid fuck, you better leave something in the coffee jar. See you next quarter.